you are here for the conclusion of our series called Frenemies. If you're just joining us, this is the fourth and the final week of this series where we've been talking all about relationships. Now, the reason that I've enjoyed this series so much is because I understand how important relationships really are. In fact, in my own personal life, relationships are hard. When I talk to people in my family, they tell you, man, relationships are hard. What I know about almost every single one of you is you would probably say relationships are hard. But I believe that we're learning a lot of things in this series that make our relationships a whole lot better. And so we want to continue in that just one more time before we move on into a new section of our study of the book of James. To get us rolling today, I want to say this. The great philosopher, a guy named Chris Rock. Anybody ever heard of him? He once said this about relationships. He said, relationships are easy to get into, but hard to maintain. He asked the question, why are they so hard to maintain? Because it's hard to keep up the lie. You know you can't have relationships being you. Nobody wants a relationship with somebody who looks like you or acts like you or sounds like you. When you meet somebody for the first time, you're not meeting them, you're meeting their representative. Now, I know that Chris Rock is a comedian, and I know that Chris Rock is trying to be funny, but you know that there's a little bit of truth behind every joke. Most people, they go through life believing there's something wrong with me. And so we end up trying to be somebody that we're not. Now, most people would tell you that's a terrible way for you to live your life. Most people would tell you you should just be yourself. But I would completely disagree. In fact, I would tell you that trying to be like someone else is the perfect way to live as long as the person you're trying to be like is Jesus. You see, the truth is, there is something wrong with me. And the truth is, there is something wrong with you. Everyone's normal until you get to know them a little bit, right? And when you get to know them, you start to see the flaws in their life. And when the flaws start to come out, the relationships that we have, they get really, really hard to maintain. And this is why I tell people all the time, we have to follow the teachings and the example of Jesus Christ. When we allow Him to be our representative, to use Chris Rock's word, all of a sudden our relationships start to dramatically improve. As a follower of Jesus, I don't want to act like me. As a follower of Jesus, I don't want to sound like me. As a follower of Jesus, I want to act like Jesus and I want to sound like Jesus, because when I do that, not only does my life get a whole lot better, but my relationships get a whole lot better. As James comes to the end of this section on relationships, he's going to address a behavior that he sees in a lot of people. And the reason that he's addressing this behavior is because he knows that this particular behavior can be incredibly destructive to relationships. When you think about this behavior, I want you to know that this is a behavior that you never see in Jesus, but it's a behavior that you see all the time in us. The behavior that we're going to be talking about today is what James calls slander. Now, just to get us all on the same page, I want to give you a definition so that we're all clear in what this really is. Slander is the act of making a false statement that causes or intends to cause damage to a person's reputation. And so just to be really, really clear, these are statements that we make about other people. And what we say either intends to cause damage or it unintentionally causes damage to another person's reputation. Now, I want you to know today that the Bible doesn't just consider this behavior immoral. We live in a country that considers this behavior illegal. It's called slander, or it's called defamation of character. And so I want you to think about the severity of this kind of behavior. I don't want you to downplay it. I don't want you to act like it's no big deal or that we're over exaggerating today. I want to remind you that we live in a country that celebrates our freedom of speech. We live in a country that has laws that are designed to protect your freedom of speech. But even in a country like that, this country has determined that there are some things that cannot come out of your mouth. And slander is one of those few things. Now, some of you hear that and you think, yeah, Pastor Brandon, but what I'm saying is not false. What I'm saying about them is completely true. And I would say to you, yes, the Bible has a word for that as well. And that word is gossip. And what you need to know is that both slander and gossip are incredibly toxic to every relationship you have. It doesn't matter if the rumor is true. Doesn't matter if you think it's true or it might be true or if it's completely false. When we talk about other people, rather than talking to other people, when we make accusations or we say things that hurt other people, rather than using our voices to help other people, God is not happy about it because He knows what that type of speech does to them, but He also knows what it does to you, and He definitely knows what it does to our relationships. See, the truth about slander is that slander hurts our credibility, makes it really hard for people to trust us. Slander corrupts the people that we're sharing the juicy details with. And of course, slander always hurts the people that we're talking about. And yet, unfortunately, slander is all too common in our world today. You can hop on social media. You can turn on the news. You can hang out in the break room at work. You can hang out in the locker room at school. You can even find it in your own home. And in all of these places, in a matter of only minutes, you will probably hear someone else spreading all kinds of rumors about someone else. And in most cases, the people who are saying these types of things, they don't even really know if what they're saying is true. They didn't see it with their own eyes. In most cases, they just heard it from someone else, but they say it anyway. They share it anyway, and they're happy to repost it anyway. In fact, I'll give you an example. How many of you have seen the photo that went viral of LeBron James getting ready to go out for the Barbie movie? Anybody see this? Right? Let me tell you something about that photo. That's not even real. It's completely fabricated. Could you imagine if someone put a picture like that of me and it started circulating around Ocean Springs? This church would empty out in a hurry, man. That's not even a real photo. It was created by AI or artificial intelligence. In fact, one of the biggest problems with AI right now is what experts are calling AI hallucinations. AI is just making stuff up. Now, that's not just a problem for AI, that's a problem for you and I, right? But we've been making stuff up about people our entire lives, and we spread it with no regard for how it might affect them. We say it with no regard for how it might impact their reputation, how it might affect their business, or how it might affect their family. And then we wonder why we struggle with relationships. I'll tell you right now, today you're going to make a decision about the kind of person you want to be. Are you going to be the kind of person who uses your words to tear people down? Or are you going to be the kind of person who uses your words to build people up? James chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. This is what he said. Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you are not keeping it, but sitting in judgment on it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? Now, James starts out by being very, very clear. He simply says, do not slander one another. And I go, thank you, James, because it's always helpful to know what you're supposed to do. And in this case, it's always helpful to know what you're not supposed to do. But it's also important to know why you do it or why you don't do it. See, James doesn't just tell us not to slander. The question is, why do we slander? Why do we spread rumors about other people? Why do we say things behind someone's back that we would never say to their face? What's going on inside of you? What's going on inside of me that we would talk that way about fellow human beings? When you look at the greater context, James helps us understand exactly why we slander. The problem is we're prideful. If you look all the way back up into verse 6, James reminds us that God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. A few verses later, right before the verses that we've been reading today, in verse 10, James says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. Before James ever directly addresses the problem of slander, you find all of these rumblings and a conversation starting about the issues of pride and humility. He's setting the stage. And the reason he's setting the stage is because he wants us to understand not only what we do, but he wants us to understand why we do it. In our culture, we have a pride problem. Can we agree on that? We have a pride month. We have a pride flag. We have prideful posts. We see prideful people. And yet I want you to know today that pride is not a virtue. The Bible says it's a vice. In fact, I want you to remember that pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's been called the sin from which all other sins arise. St. Augustine reminded us that pride is what turned us into angels and turned us into devils. And I'm telling you right now, it will do the same to every single one of us. You can look back at Scripture and you can go, man, how did this angelic being become satanic? And it's because of the problem of pride. Now, right after he talks about pride, he tells these Christians, do not slander one another. You see, the reason we slander one another is because we are prideful people. We go through life believing that we are better than other people. We go through life believing that we know better than other people. We go through life believing that we deserve better than other people. This is what pride looks like. And all of this pride that lives inside of us drives us to slander other people in an attempt to exalt ourselves. When I slander other people, I am making it clear to both myself and to everyone around me that I think I am better than other people. I'm telling you what they did as if to suggest that's the kind of thing I would never do. I'm telling you who they're dating because I want you to know that's the kind of person I would never date. Right? I'm talking to you and I'm telling you about the mess in their life, but because I want you to know I don't have a mess in my life. Now, I'm not directly building myself up, but I am clearly tearing other people down by using slander. And in the process of tearing them down, I'm making it clear that I want everyone to see me as superior, and I want you to see all of these other people in my life as inferior because I am better. I want to point out to you that comparing your best moments to someone else's worst moments is not really a fair comparison. And yet we do it all the time. Author John Bloom once wrote this. He said, "The foremost slanderer that we must silence is the one inside us, full of malignant pride, Our sin natures are not interested in truth, but in self-glory. So they seek to manipulate others through slander for our own selfish benefit. We compare our best moments to everyone else's worst moments because we're not interested in truth. We're only interested in glorifying ourselves. We want other people to know that we are better. We want other people to put us on a pedestal. We want other people to admire us and to envy us and want to be like us. And the reason that we do it is because of what Bloom called malignant pride. It's like that malignant tumor that's growing inside of you that if you don't cut it out, it's going to kill you. Or in this case, it's going to kill every relationship that you care about. This is why social media is so problematic. If you think about most posts that you make and most posts that I make, most posts that other people make, they are almost always pride-driven posts. We like to make it all about us on our platform and on our page. We want the world to know what we're doing. We want the world to be jealous of the opportunities that we have and the places that we go. We want the world to know how good we look and how great our life is. In fact, we're so prideful that we don't just think I am better. We think I know better. I know better than anyone else. In fact, this is what James is getting at the end of verse 11. Listen very carefully to what he said. He said, anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you are not keeping it, but sitting in judgment on it. James isn't just talking about slander. Now he's talking about something that is very closely associated with slander. Now he's talking about judging others. Now, this is a little bit confusing, especially for Christians. And the reason it's confusing is because a lot of Christians engage in this behavior because they misunderstand what Scripture really teaches about the issue of judging others. This is why it's so important for us to not only understand what James had to say, but to understand how do we reconcile what James had to say with what other authors in Scripture had to say, right? This is at times a little bit confusing for us, especially when it comes to the issue of judging others. James says that when we slander or when we speak against a brother or a sister, we are judging them. Now, to be clear, James says that is not okay. In verse 12, he couldn't have said it any more clear. He said, who are you to judge your neighbor? Earlier in the passage, he says there is only one judge and there's only one lawgiver. And here's a hint. It's not us, okay? It's God, all right? But this is what we do. And the reason that we judge other people is because we don't understand the difference between judgment and accountability. Accountability is when someone's asking for it. When it comes to judgment, I promise you this, nobody is ever asking for it. James says that when we judge people, we're not just judging them. James says in that moment, we are now judging the law. And so this pride has now elevated us into a position that we really don't deserve to be in. Instead of keeping the law, James now accuses us of judging the law because we think we know better. And so we start evaluating what the law says. We start making judgment calls, not just about what it says, but about what the law really means. We make judgment calls about how the law should be applied to other people and decisions that they've made. And when we do that, we put ourselves into a place where we are both judge and jury. And that is prideful. James says very clearly, your job is not to judge the law. Your job is to keep the law. You don't need to spend your life worrying about what everyone else is doing. You need to worry about yourself and what you're doing. You know what Jesus called his followers to do? You know the law that James has in mind when he talks about this? As a follower of Jesus, he understood what the royal law really was. Jesus said it like this: the whole law can be summed up in two things: love God and love one another. There is nothing that is loving about slander or judgment. This isn't who God has called us to be. And yet, when you spend your life slandering others and judging others, it's not good for you. It's not good for them. And it's certainly not good for your relationship. In fact, I would tell you that it's not even good for you, because if you spend your life judging other people, then your mind is always on them and it's never on you, and you miss out on the opportunity to grow. This is why James is talking about not just judging the law, but the importance of you giving your life to keeping the law. He knows that if you focus on keeping the law, then you've got an opportunity to grow. You got an opportunity to be a better husband or a better father. If you stay focused on keeping the law, you've got a better opportunity to be a better mother or a better wife or a better friend. But for so many people, these thoughts never even cross our minds. Why? Because we're not focused on keeping the law. We're focused on judging everyone else who may or may not be keeping the law. Now, some of you hear all this conversation about judgment and judging others, and you're a little bit confused because you have a completely different understanding of what Scripture teaches about judging others. You didn't think it was wrong to judge others. Some of you really did believe that it was your God-given responsibility to judge others. You hear what James wrote, but right now you're also thinking in the back of your mind about what some of the Apostle Paul wrote. And so let's clear it up. Let's go to that passage that most Christians turn to when they say, oh no, it's my right, it's my responsibility to judge other people. You see it in a couple of places. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, starting in verse 12, Paul spends a lot of time talking about the Christian activity of exercising judgment in certain cases. Now, before we start judging one another, we need to ask a couple of questions. Number one, we need to ask, what is the kind of case that he's talking about? And then number two, we need to ask, what does that judgment actually look like? And this will clear it all up. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 12 and 13. He asks this. He says, what business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not supposed to judge those inside? God will judge those who are outside, but you expel the wicked person from among you. Now, a lot of Christians read that. And when they read that, they think, okay, I got it. It's God's job to judge all those people who aren't Christians. And it's my job to judge all of those people who are Christians. Now, hold on a minute. Because James said in chapter 4, verse 12, who are you to judge your neighbor? There is only one judge and one lawgiver, and it's not you. Paul and James, they are not contradicting each other. They are talking about two different things. Let me ask you, what was the Apostle Paul addressing when he wrote this? He was writing about a young man in the church of Corinth who was sleeping with his stepmother, and he was bragging to the whole church about it. Now, to be clear, Paul is not saying that you need to be talking about him. Paul is saying somebody needs to go and talk directly to him. In fact, don't just talk to him, expel him from the church so that he no longer has the opportunity to hang around his father, and even more specifically, to hang around his stepmother. This is so important because most Christians would never have the courage to go talk to this man, but they would feel completely free to share all the juicy stories about this man. James would say, and Paul would say, don't talk about him, go talk directly to him. That's not judgment, that's protecting a family from a sexual predator. Okay? This is not judgment. Next, the Apostle Paul talks about a completely different scenario. Chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, he said this. He said, if any of you has a dispute with another, do you dare take it before the ungodly for judgment instead of before the Lord's people? Or do you not know that the Lord's people will judge the world? He's speaking about the afterlife. And if you were to judge the world, are you not competent to judge trivial cases right here, right now? Then he says this in verses 5 and 6. He said, I say this to shame you. Is it possible that there is nobody among you wise enough to judge a dispute between believers, but instead one brother takes another to court, and this in front of unbelievers? Paul knows that there are going to be times when Christians will disagree with one another, and someone needs to make a judgment call on their behalf. Settling a dispute is different than slandering a person. Paul doesn't want believers fighting over things in a courtroom in front of people who are not Christians, because he knows that that will ruin the reputation of Christ and his church. In situations like that, when there's a dispute, what do? People start slinging mud at one another. People start airing all their dirty laundry. They start telling all their little dirty secrets. And it makes people look at the Christian community and lose all respect for Christ, but it also makes them lose all respect for his followers. Let's remember what slander is. Paul is not advocating for a behavior that damages a person's reputation. Paul is advocating for a behavior that preserves their reputation. In this case, we're not judging and talking about people. We're talking to people, and we're specifically talking to people who asked for help in settling a dispute so they don't have to take it into a public court of law. See, James is talking about something that's completely different than Paul. Paul is talking about judgment that helps people. And Paul says, do that. James is talking about a kind of judgment that hurts other people and their reputation. And James says, don't you dare do that. Jesus himself warned his own disciples about people who exercise a kind of judgment that hurts other people. This is what he said in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. He said, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Jesus is pretty clear. He said, do not judge. Now, you could leave here and you could go out there judging people. But it's probably not in your best interest to judge other people, because Jesus himself said that the measure you use when you judge all these other people will be the same measure that is used against you. If you are hard on other people, I promise you this: other people will be hard on you. If you are hard on other people, Jesus is suggesting that God will be hard on you. That makes relationships not just difficult, that makes relationships almost impossible. Judging others is not really your job. James says that it's God's job. Verse 12, there is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? You know why you should probably never judge your neighbor? Because you'll never really know what really happened. You'll probably never really know why it happened. You'll probably never know how they feel about what happened. You'll probably never have any idea to what extent it really happened. And for those reasons, and many, many more, James says, do not judge other people. Don't talk bad or slander other people. Slander will affect you. It will affect the people that you're talking to. And it will always hurt the people that you're talking about. John Bloom said something that we all need to remember. He said it like this: a good name represents a person's character, which is the most valuable thing about their identity. A good name is who we are in the minds of others. And since relationships trade in the currency of trust, a reputation is a very precious asset. Bloom is right. A person's reputation may be the most valuable asset that they have. And yet, it's an asset that can be destroyed by people who are careless people using careless words. And that's why I just want to encourage you today that when you leave, don't say anything. Don't repeat anything. Don't share anything. Don't repost anything that ever damages another person's reputation. Instead, humble yourself. Rein that pride in. Extend grace to others. When someone else blows it, remember, you've blown it too. And when you hear that someone else has blown it, I want you to do for others what you wish someone had done for you. Instead of talking about them, talk to them. Instead of hating on them, try loving them. Instead of tearing them down, I want you to encourage them and build them back up. And if you do that, I promise you this, you will start to enjoy the kinds of relationships that God always intended for you to enjoy. Let's pray together. As we bow our heads, I just want to ask you to enter into a time of reflection right now. I want you to think first and foremost about your speech. Think about your day-to-day. Think about your week this week. Have there been moments where you have been slandering other people? Have there been moments where you've been gossiping about other people? If so, I want you to start by just asking God, forgive me. God, thank you for helping me see how wrong that is. And God, help me to change. But I don't just want you to ask God to forgive you. I want you to ask the other person to forgive you. And I want you to even ask the person that you shared it with to forgive you. If you've been saying things like that, you've hurt the reputation of Christ. If you've been saying things like that, you've been hurting other people. And that's why we need to humble ourselves and ask for forgiveness. God, relationships are incredibly hard. It's like we're always positioning and jockeying for power because we're driven by pride. And so, God, I just pray that you might take the things that we've studied in the book of James, and I pray, God, that you might start to change our hearts, change the way we think, change the way we speak, and change the way we live, that we might enjoy relationships the way they were always intended to be enjoyed. God, I know and I confess that as soon as we leave here, we're probably going to hear something about someone and we're going to be tempted to repeat it. We're going to see something in someone and we're going to be tempted to share it. But God, I pray that long after this message is over, that the Holy Spirit would continue to linger in our hearts and minds. Pray, God, that you would just convict us and remind us to keep a tight rein on that tongue, to be humble and to be gracious, and to protect other people and their reputation by keeping our mouths shut. God, it's easier said than done, so we ask for your help, and we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen.